Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
So we will continue discussing for each because little bit I wanted to discuss it more before we move to other this thing. So yesterday's class, whoever has attended, you know that in for each loop, basically first intention when you are using for each is when you have to iterate all the elements in the given collection, right? And collection of type, it can be any collection, right, of any kind of data types. That's why when we are writing, what we do is we start from the right hand side. We take the collection object and then we find what is the data type. So data type, this is a collection of type string. You see string array. Can you see here? This variable is of type string array. So we have, if we have to iterate a collection, first of all what we do is after writing for each, so one second, let me write a code and show it to you. For example, for the same loop, if we are writing for each, now you will write for each, open and close braces and give this one. So our body is ready. We have to just fill this inside, okay? Now what is our collection name? ARR, right? Can you see up? It is ARR. And the collection is of type string. This is an array of string. So first we'll write the collection name, okay? Now what we'll do is, we'll write a keyword in. And in the left hand side, this is a collection of type string. So we'll write string and any variable name, say str, okay? This is your syntax. You understood how you'll form? It can be of any type.
Can we give any integer data types?
See, suppose you have an array of type integer, okay? Suppose variable name is int I and this string is of type int, okay? Obviously it will give error here. So what we'll do is, we'll write it 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 2, 3, 2, 1. Problem. So all because of Srivatsa. He didn't come in time. He would have rectified it before only. Okay. So you saw that. First I'll give you an example with string, and the same thing will repeat with integer. This is a commenting one. No. We'll copy this. Because we are going to write the same thing, even the result also will be same. Only difference is, now we don't have to use this I. Correct. So we'll use just the variable. See how it works is, okay, how it works is, there is a collection of string and the collection name is as you know ARR, okay? In that we have certain names written over there. Now what we'll do is, like how it works is, now this collection, in every iteration, it will take that particular iteration value. For example, we all know first iteration is called iteration 0. So it will take the 0th element of the iteration, that is Hemant, and copy it directly into str, okay? In the second iteration, like first iteration, it will copy hers and put it into str. So there is no use of I. In the previous application, what we used to do is, we used to initialize I with 0, and that's how we used to access the 0th element of the array. Here this work will be done by your compiler itself. okay, or your runtime. Understood? So we'll see, and the output should be exactly same. It should say Hemant, Hers, Karthik, okay, and we are printing right line, so it should come one below the other. Okay. Syed, what do you feel? Is there something to be done in my PC? Whenever it is slow, I'll catch hold of you. This is happening to me. I don't know about other developers and testers what's.
No, sir, the thing is
They
they
will
will
not
not
install just to do
laptop is just like for
Who will not install Visual
directly
Studio?
No, on the laptop, they'll only use the system. But instead, we can have, like now we are having to incurring two cost, buying a PC and then having a laptop.
no, just for the security reasons inside can't install on this thing. We can't carry.
Yeah, correct. There are Steams which doesn't need insight. Okay, let me see first. It is taking so much of time. Still it is not running. Okay, now you see the names exactly how we were seeing with for. But if you compare the line of code, see, you are writing these things, all those logics you have to do, right? Increment, declaring a variable, and then here writing array of I. So chances of doing mistakes and steps to be taken are more. Whereas for each, yeah, writing, conceptualizing, for some time you will feel it little difficult, but once you get used to writing this, right, it will become much more easier, and number of steps what you are writing will be very less. Okay. Now just assume, now we have to work, we have to iterate this. So it should display 9 to 1. How we will do it? Again, what is the collection of object name? INTI. Okay. This is for integer sort name. Now what is the single object type? Integer. INT. Now I can keep it as str also, because this is just a name, doesn't matter. It might look like we are showing them string, but it is carrying integer. If you see the data type here, it is integer. Now there is another thing, like usually your console.write line takes string as an object, but automatically it will typecast, so don't worry. Or suppose sometimes what happens if you are outputting something like this, automatically if there is one string, but we are trying to concatenate with integer, equivalent it will convert it into string only, because in logically it should give error, because one is okay, one is string, another one is integer, right? If you see here, so you will see what it is, integer, right? And if you see this is a string. But because string and integer cannot be added, it will understand we mean to concatenate. So now your compiler is becoming smart. It used to give error in the earlier version of C#, but now that thing is resolved, and now automatically compiler makes a decision that no, when we trying to add string and integer, it will be a concatenation, not a, so convert integer into string. That's why we were not even getting error when we are trying to do console.write line, because console will only take string, so it will convert automatically to string. So we don't have to take that tension. So output should be, yes, in reverse order, because this is how our code is written. Anybody is having any confusion meanwhile to understand for each? If you have any questions, ask. Don't feel that you know what people will think. It's better to ask questions now than struggle in your practicals. When you are doing some program, you will struggle. It's better you struggle here. And now you know, right? I've stopped beating people. Otherwise, in my class, I used to beat. And Nagesh, you have attended my classes, right, before? Not fully, but part of it. You have got beatings?
Yeah.
What's happening? Controls. Okay. So, as you can see,
Sir, is there possibility to print part of the value of flourish?
yes, but not with for each. You can do break again, but there's no point, right? But it's the for definitely. For example, let me run both. Huh? For each you can put break, right? But again you will declare a variable outside that for each. There is no use. That's why I told when you have to iterate each element of a collection, use for each. And 99.9% of the time, we actually tend to iterate the entire collection. Sometimes what happens if you are looking for something, then you can use break if you encounter that. For example, let me say if str equal to 3, okay. Okay, what is the output now? It's coming correct, right? Because printing is done before. So, first 3 will be printed and then if it encounters, okay, it is 3, so break. So, only numbers after 3 will not come. If you want to break before this, you have to put this logic in the top. So,
From 9 to 4.
huh?
For if condition you will use curly braces.
Where you were sleeping in the class when I was explaining. Okay, not required, it's not like that. See, if you put curly braces indicates what? It's a block of code, right? We say this block, yeah, this block belongs to this if condition. But if you have only one statement, right, or only one, only one statement is there, in that code, then you can avoid writing curly braces. If you write one more line of code, then it will only take one line, second line it will ignore. Okay. Any doubt, any confusion? You understood how to break it, but usually don't do that until unless your program requires. If you need to only navigate certain length of the, your collection, then try to use for or while rather than using for each loop. And while and do while you need to avoid, because again declaration of the variable which is being used for tracking the count is done outside, so scope of variable is a problem. So try to use for if you need to navigate only some part of it. Or sometimes what happens, you need to know what is the current number of iteration. In that scenario also you can use for. For example, you need to know what is the current value of I. So, current value of iteration. In that case you can use for loop. Understood? Anything else that you want me to cover in this? Because it takes a lot of more complex collections. But as we don't know about this, right, like for example, we have generics, right? We have more complicated data types like models. You guys might be working with those things, but here because we have not covered in the class, and this for each is not going anywhere. So we'll be using it once we read about that. Again, we'll reuse it. like how we can use it in for. So if you encounter that kind of example in some book or in online, don't worry, we will cover that in the future. Okay. As of now, writing for each, anybody is having any difficulty, any concepts you want to be clear. So what I would expect you guys to do is in this weekend, work with all data types, right? Try to write some example. I'll see everybody's code. So there won't be any class on Monday, but there will be a class, right? So it will not be recording. I'll be giving some task for 1 hour's time, like a 1.5 hour, what we usually occupy. We will only give you tasks on the flow, on the fly, right? And I'll expect you guys to do. I'll only give what you guys have already read about. I'll not give something which is not been covered, but there will be logical twists. So as of now, we are only doing very basic stuff, right? But now I'll tell you to do something. For example, a kind of virtual assistant, like how you say chatbots, right? If Swiggy, Zomato and all, any order problem, report, no customer attends you. First, automatically there will be automatically bot who will be assisting you, something like that. So this is just an example. So how to make use of your programming in a more creative way with the same existing resources. So those things you will get to know on Monday. Okay. So shall we continue? Again, the same thing what I was telling, it is here. It is displayed in some different way. Like we can use, like here, it is something like if you have a array of integer and you want to sum all those. So this is one example where whatever is the number, we are incrementing it by 1. It's not sum of all, basically incrementing by 1, and it is not getting cleared. So for example, in the first time, in the first iteration, 1 will be added to 1. So what is the output? 2. 2 will be stored back to number, right? In the second iteration, again number is cleared, right? Number will be reinitialized. So at the end you will only get 4. So you have to see all those things properly to understand what's happening with this iteration.
Sir, that gives error for each.
So,
we cannot edit the arrays data for each.
no, it should not be the case. Right. Again, this might be a recent fix, like as we saw right in the switch. Usually switch allows you to go through multiple cases at once, but I think so now it is not permitted. Previously we used to modify that, but it's okay, like if it is not happening, well and good. Usually we use these variables to only recover the current collection value, and if you want to edit it, there will be alternative, like you copy it to another variable and then do the edits. Okay. This might be prohibited because next iteration it will change anyway. Okay. Loops is covered already. Okay. Now comes method. We need to cover this because or Monday's task, this will play a vital role, right? Now, what is a method? Can anyone tell? What do you mean by method?
It's a set of instructions to perform some project.
Okay. Naveen?
Method is
Okay, while writing. Okay, so correct. It is set of instructions to do a complete task. Like if you have certain task or some subset of the task which is complete. Okay. Now it is again out of usage basis. You might feel it is incomplete, but for your purpose you feel this is the complete thing what you want. It is a complete thing. It might have only 2 instructions or 4 instructions or only 1 instruction. Doesn't matter. If you feel that this is the complete task, it is getting performed within this set of code, is a complete task. So you should not argue on that. Sir, you told that it will only be called as a method. When it does, you can write one-liner code also. Basically, this is something which is giving you a functionality. Okay, and second criteria is it is used, it is used frequently. For example, I will tell you, now there is a task of creating a mobile phone. Now, there is a feature called ring. Right? So now you have written a program. Do you know at which sequence it will ring? Your phone will ring? No. But there is certain, or for example, there is a sequence also, right? But the sequence comes very often. Then you will write the same code again and again. It will take up more memory, right? Because you have to store the set of codes, right? In some places. Rather than you write all the code separately in one place, and whenever you encounter that action, you reference your code to go there, execute this set of code, again come back, and then start executing your normal sequence. So this is a major functionality of a method. Now, method is defined in a certain structure which takes certain arguments and return a result, a single result.
What is different between like method and function?
Yeah, I'll come to that. There's no difference as such. It is a new name, and why you can argue why this new name is given. Okay? Rather than like talking about what is the difference. So basically just how we call it. Okay? For example, now I'll show you the body. See, this is how method is written. Let me take a complete one first. Okay. See, this is a an example of a method, right? See, first one is accessibility. Again, more about accessibility we'll read. Okay. As of now, you understand it can be public, private. Okay. How it is accessed. Now, because you don't know much about that, what is public, what is private. So let it be, till this point. Just understand it is for accessibility. How and where it can be accessed. Okay. For time being, you can keep everything as public. Okay. Just for ease of use. Because second one is return type. Okay. Return type is, as I told, right, it will take bunch of inputs and then return a single output. That is a method. So if you are returning something, you also specify what you are returning. what is the data type, so that when you execute this method or a function, you will expect that kind, you create that kind type of data type in the code to gather the output, right? And then third is method name, right? So method name is just a normal name, how we give a name to variable, we give name to method also, right? Now after that, in this small bracket, we have arguments. Okay, so basically again argument, how it is given, first one is the data type of the argument and the name of the argument. Okay, and if you have multiple argument, you separate it by comma. Clear? And then here this single line return, you can do also, you can do lot of processing with this input, and then output you can return. Here this could have been, for example, let me write this code for you guys. Okay. So now whatever we were doing, let's assume we want to do in a method. So we'll say private it won't take, let me write a namespace. Yeah, again namespace, just as of now you understand this is how we write a code. Okay. Okay. Still. What is the object reference? Need to see.
No difference.
How did that reference
What?
In this parenthesis, that parameter name is also in a
No, that's not a problem. See here, have we done anything? Somewhere something I've missed. Usually it यदि 1 साल लगेगा कोर्स को ख़त्म होने में ऐसा we are not writing program at all. If we start writing 50 lines code also, no, gone. No, it is not terminated. Okay, terminated now. Because there is no output, so we have not written anything, right? So let me write public and see. Public only, right? Okay, let me add one more class. Sorry, I cannot see it that side, so I'll write it here and then put it. So basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to add one more class file. And I'll just name it So what I did is I have created a class. Okay, namespace is test1. Test1. Now what first we will do is again, I'm adding a line of code that you might not understand right now, but that is fine. I'll just explain you what is this purpose is. So basically, we have created a new class called DISP, right? I need to create an instance. Like how we declare a variable. That's how we declare a class object. Now, because we need to access the method inside this class, I'll put a dot. Okay, the function name is also disp only. Okay, let's call it display to avoid confusion. Display, and it is expecting a integer array. We do have a integer array. So now we should have a display till. Do we line this code? Need this code? No. Let's only have a display till. Yeah, 0 to 9 to 1. Okay, sorry, it is with me. Can you see that? Okay, now just assume that we want to display 1 to 9 as well. Now, ideally, we would have had to write the same code again, right? Because displaying code will remain same, right? Only your data input data will change. Now, I'll show you advantages of. Yes. Okay. Variable name should be either different or this we are reinitialize. It is giving a red error, is it? Okay. You have to reinitialize the better. I'll just change it to int. Okay, this is 1, yes. Okay. Now let's run it and see if our logic works. Now, can you see 9 to 1 and 1 to 9 with the same code? So that is the beauty of a method where you can reuse the code again and again. Now you see, you are not writing this, otherwise you had to write this code. Sorry. You had to write this code again to just get, this value. Now I'll change it a little. Okay. So what we'll do is, is it giving error? No, right? No, I'll just cut this from here and go to main program. Object array. Let me take this thing. Okay, no, it's not taking because we are not able to convert this int array into, if it would have been an array list, like in generics, it would have been much easier. But what we can also do is, we can create a kind of generic methods. Okay, we'll learn about this. Suppose now we want to handle, currently it is handling different length and size of array inputs, and the same code is able to process it. Now, for example, let's move on and try to understand the other part. So, you understand say now how a method is defined. I will go a little up. The basic form of method definition is this. That is void. Now, if you don't have any return type, and most of you already know this, right? Because that was there in C also. If you don't have a return type, like if you are not returning anything from method, like in my code also I had written void, because we are just displaying, we are not returning any value. If you are not returning anything from the method, then the return type is written as void. You have to write the return type, but instead of keeping it empty, you will write void. Okay? A void indicates there is no return type. Clear? And then you again method name, and there might be a scenario that you don't need any input also. Okay? For example, we have a function, right? That function is open the door. Now there we can ask question, which door, right? We have so many doors. But now there is another method called open conference room door. For that you don't need any input, you already know which door to open. So in that scenario you don't need any input, right? Sometimes you need to give a feedback that yeah, door is open, then you have a return type. But if I don't bother the output, then return type is also not needed in scenario like how we were doing coding just now. We don't need the output, okay, because we just wanted to display and we have displayed within the method. So our work is done there. So depending upon whether we need a return or not, then we'll write first the return type from the method, and then you have to write also a return statement. For example, we can see the second one in the, can you see this? No. Okay. Now suppose method name is my method return data. Okay. Now it is not taking any input, it is just returning an output, and output is of type number it is, right. So first, or you can say integer. So first we have to write the return type, that is int. Can you see in the top left we have written int, and because there is a return type we have to also write a statement called return that indicates which variable or what constant to return. In this case there is a constant 10, right, that we are returning. But suppose if there is a variable that we are returning, we will see that also little later, that we can return variables or expression. Expression means you are doing something, some addition, subtraction or any complex operation also you are doing, and what is the result of it, you are returning. The same thing what we have seen in if, right. We are not just writing a boolean variable or constant, we are writing an expression also. So first expression will be evaluated, and whatever is the output of the expression is considered as a input to the if. Similarly here also, if you are writing an expression, first expression will be evaluated and the output of the expression will be returned. Clear? But in this case we are returning a constant 10, and 10 is of type integer, that is why we have mentioned return type as integer. Now there is access modifiers. Okay. So whether your method is private or public, again details of that we will immediately get to know, because once we do the exercise and when we start a new chapter, that is class and objects and namespaces, there we will start with this. So don't worry, we are not too far behind of this public private thing, so we will get to know immediately. Okay. So this is just a structure for accessibility. Usually you will write your methods like this: first accessibility, then the return type, name, then your parameters, and then return. Okay. This is how we call the method. We have already seen that. First one, you see it, it is called when there is no return type. So you are not expecting return, so we are not trying to take anything from return. Second one is expecting a return, but we are not passing any input. So you say in the right hand side, when we are calling the method name is my method return data, right. We have already seen the example of that in the top, right. It was not taking input, but it was returning a integer, right. So first we have declared an integer by name my number. You can do in the same line also, instead of doing in two line, first declare and then use it, you would have written int my number equals my method return data, because it does not take in input, so that small brackets are kept empty. Clear? Now third we will understand with a parameter and return. Now suppose if we have to add two numbers, that is very basic operation, we have already seen in the previous example, but we will discuss this again. So this indicates the accessibility, right, and we will stop here, we will not try to dive deeper into this. Second line is our return type. What is the return type? Integer. And then method name is add numbers. Now we have two numbers as input, number 1 and number 2. And what we are doing is, we have directly next line is return. That means in this line we are expecting a return. So now instead of constant, last what we have seen is we have just returned a constant. Now you have a expression. This is what? This is expression where we are not returning number 1 or number 2, we are returning number 1 plus number 2. Okay. So basically whatever we have provided as input, both will be added, because both are of type integer, so result will be of type integer, and the same thing we are returning, and it will match to our return type. That is why you will not see any error in the code. But if return type is, for example, you are dividing, when you are dividing, resultant might be a floating point number, and then you might see an error because your return type will be integer. So you have to be careful, and the compiler itself will give you an error right? The moment you try to do something like that, see, if you multiply two integer, you will get an integer. So when you are doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, there won't be any error. But the moment you try to see a division here, you will automatically see compiler will tell you return type should be floating, double or decimal. Clear? Now you see how we call a method which has a input. Here again we are inputting two constant, right? Because there was a number 1 and number 2. How method works is, when you encounter this line of code in your main program, okay, this you understand, you write it later but you understand it carefully, right? See, in the previous example if you would have seen here, but nobody asked questions, so our method name, what data we are passing here? Int I. What is my input variable name here is? Yeah, both are array only, int I, right? Both are a array of type integer, right? Here also here. Is both the variables same? No. Even though both the name are same, we are passing into the same method with the same variable name, both the variables are not same. How method works is, when you pass some parameter into that or argument into that. See, in C, when we say parameter or argument, both are same. In C we used to call parameters, in C# we call it arguments. Okay, so sometimes because I have idea of both, so sometimes I interchangeably use method, function, argument, parameters. You don't get confused. When I say function or method, it means same. When I say parameter or argument, it means I mean same at least. Okay, so when you pass a parameter and in the function, what happens is it gets copied. Actually, the same variable is not taken forward. For example, there is a method, I will do that here in this one. Okay. Now in this method, we are calling this method from main function, right? Here we will declare int a equals 5, int b equals 10. Okay. Now we will call add numbers a comma and now here a equals a plus b and return a. Now there will be some questions for you once I run it. Okay. Now I run the code. You understood code is clear, right? Anybody needs any explanation in this code, tell me now, because from here onwards I'll start asking questions what will be happening. जितनी बार इतना लेट लगेगा ना तुम्हारा ही शक्ल देखेंगे. अभी तो मैं देख रहा हूँ, देखो जैसे प्रैक्टिकल शुरू होगा सभी देखेंगे तुम्हारा शक्ल. Okay, now cursor has come here. So for next two lines, you know what should be the value of A, B. Here value of A 10. Now what should I put, F10 or F11? What will happen if I press F10? What do we have to do? A step over or a step into? What I should press? Okay. Now here what is the value of A? What is the value of B? What should be the value of A? Huh? Here, where is the cursor? See that yellow point. What should be? A should be? Currently it is 5, but when I execute the line, what should be the value of A?
15.
Clear? What is this? Correct? Now I am returning what is the value of A? Here, what should be the value of A now?
Now it should be 8.
8. 8 कैसे होगा यार ये? अभी मेथड रिजल्ट रिटर्न किया है. Before returning A was, before returning the value to this function, what was the value of A? 15. So I have returned it here. Now we will see what is the value of C first. What is the value of C? What should be the value of A? But it was 15 before, right? So why is it will become 5 again? क्या लॉजिक है यार? How it will become 50? 20? Huh? It's not reinitialized. You have to understand that only. This A and that A has no relation apart from having the same name. Both are two different variables. Understood? Here, that's why we have written the name A and B to just confuse you, because both the names, it looks, above and below each other. But this A is a different A and this A is a different A.
So that calculation will end there and this will.
Correct. So once you return, the scope of this A is within this method only. Like how we created I within a for loop, you remember? This is A within the method. Clear? This A has nothing to do with this A. Both are distinct A's. When you call a method add numbers, what happens is all the variables which was created before this gets pushed into stack. Okay, it is kind of saved and goes to a new memory location, because this add number is a new address which is separate from the normal flow of the program. It goes there. Here it says you have to create two variables. First it creates two variables by name A and B, and this is only name till programming. When you compile it, it becomes a memory location. So you don't think that when you have said A, is A when we are writing, it is not the location. It is just a name given temporarily in your programming language. Computer doesn't understand this A as the same, this thing. So it creates two different memory locations A and B, copies these values into this. right? And then performs the operation and returns. The moment it hits the returns operation, all the memory allocated for this method purpose is deallocated now. So what A and B was created temporarily is now destroyed. The moment it hits the return, it has the value to return, everything else is destroyed, and that A is returned to this C. That's why you saw C was holding the value of 15, whereas A and B will have the same value. You can check it here also. A is still 5, right? Understood? And if someone has studied C, there was another concept called pass by value, pass by reference. Suppose sometimes there is a need of you want to modify the same data what you are passing, right? Then actually what you do is you actually don't pass the value of this thing, right? Usually what we are doing when we are calling a method like this, we are copying the value of the parameters or the variables to the variable we have created in the method, and then we modify that data. But what if we don't pass the value but we pass the address of where A is stored and B is stored? Then what will happen? It will receive the address, it will copy the address. But when you are copying the address, but it still remains the same address, right? Yes. And then try to access the data, which is stored in that address. Then data will be the same data which you had stored in the main program, and then modify it. And then when you return or when you don't return, why we used to do that is, suppose method allows you to only return one value, but if your program needs multiple values to be returned from the method, then this was one cheat code used to be done. How you will do it? What if we modify the same data what we are sending, then you have one return as the modified data, another return as a normal return process, then you can have multiple returns from the same method, right? But now .NET allows you to, there is a reference character, like still you have to have a way to provide the pointer kind of structure, like the referencing was used to call pointers in C. We still do have that kind of feature in C#, but it is not recommended unless it's very much required for you to modify the source parameter or source variable. Here you can argue, sir, if I want multiple returns, right? .NET provides you multiple returns in C#, so you don't have to worry. But till now we have not learned that, right? Still we see only one return, multiple inputs and single return. Now what we will come, so this is clear, right, how method works. When you see the same name variables, because people generally write the similar name to correlate what we are passing, and usually everybody do. When I am also writing, I am doing the same thing. Whoever is writing code, let it be C# or any other language, right? You might be writing the similar thing what you are passing or what you are expecting as an input, and you will create the same name variable there also. So sometimes people get confused that we are dealing with the same variable what we were dealing in the main program, but no, we just copy it into a separate variable. It looks the same, but in the memory location wise it is a totally different variable. Okay, now we will also understand. Okay, we have come to method ordering so fast. Okay, now we will get to method ordering little later. We will first understand the parameter input type, and then we will come back to overloading. Okay, optional parameter name parameters, that also we will get done so fast. See, I will tell you what happens is, it is not written in the book. I'll tell you. Basically, there is a parameter type. See, in .NET we have three types of parameters. A parameter can be an input parameter, a parameter can be or your argument, right? Argument can be a output argument, and it also can be in-out argument. When you have not written anything there, by default it is assumed that it is a in. You see, now there is no error. Now, but say I am writing out C and I write void. Okay, now int C. Can you see this? Oh, it is not initialized. It will not allow you to have uninitialized value. What is the thing it is showing?
Cannot convert.
What cannot convert? What is that? अरे यार, done. Okay, I didn't write the data type. That was the problem. Okay, I think so. It should be assigned as well. It should not be unassigned variable. Are we getting error? No. Okay, so now we'll see what happens. So we don't have any return type. Now you see C should be 0 or uninitialized, AB should be 5 and 10. Should we press F10, right? F11 कहाँ दिमाग रहता है? Okay, now value of C is 15, right? And till now you can see the value of C here is, oh yeah, already come, right? Because that is out parameter, otherwise. Okay, now you see it was 0 before we were going there, now it is 15. So this is another way of, having multiple returns, and you can have multiple parameters. Suppose if you want the same parameter to be modified, then you can declare this parameter as, okay, for example, like how we in out. No, no. Okay, I'll check it out. It used to have in out as well. Okay, I'll just check because they might have modified something on this. Okay, so we can have at least in and out parameters wherein you can have multiple returns. Okay, so if you don't want a normal traditional return type, you can also, and you can have multiple out parameters as well. Now, Now we'll come to something like what we were doing, trying to do, right? Suppose you had a string array, like in our program what we have, if you see, let me delete this. This you have understood, right?
Yes.
Now we have a string here as well. Okay, let us go to main program and declare this and try to display this name also. What is the variable name? ARR, right? I want only one method to handle this, whereas this method only accepts a integer array, right? So there is alternate way. What I was trying to do is, there is something called method overloading. Okay, it means method can have same name but different parameters. Okay. Method with same name and different parameters is called method overloading. Now you see both the method names are same. If I convert this thing into int, it will start giving error. Okay, because then it will have same name, same parameters, but now it is same name but different parameters, right? Now, and what is happening, I have just changed the data type. Rest all the data I have kept same, so my effort is little less. But now it can handle string type array input as well. Now if I run this, it will display first 9 to 1, then 1 to 9, and then the names also. And in the method first column here, you see we have all the 3 times we have called the same method, only 2 times we have called, okay, sorry, 9 to 1 and names. But we have called the same method, but we have passed different variables. One variable is of type integer array, second one is called string array. नहीं कुछ कभी तो आएगा सर, आएगा कभी भी, तुम अभी आएगा जैसे क्लास के बाद में सीधा तुम रैम खोजेगा मुझे लग रहा है. अपग्रेड भी नहीं कर सकते, तोड़ सकते हैं इसको, नहीं है लैपटॉप भी नहीं, वो सब हो गया, जो बेस्ट था वही दिया है, बेस्ट में ही प्रॉब्लम है. हाँ जो बचा हुआ वो है ना, मेरा पीसी तो है ना, ऑफिस वाला कचरा नहीं करना उसमें, ये सब एग्जाम्पल वगैरह डाल के पूरा. Okay, it is here, sorry. It is running. Can you see? Now, both the same method is handling both. You have a meeting or something? Okay, anyway, it is done. So, small topics are there. Anything is left out, you can watch the video and continue. Okay. So, understood the concept of overloading. Basically, methods which has the same name but variable like different parameters, and we use it something like this, so that one functionality takes care of displaying the integer array, second functionality takes care of displaying string array. Whereas but for the users, when you have developed this, when I am using it, for me it looks both like same, and when you start typing it, it will give you a option. Okay. Okay, sir. What is the class name? Display. Now when I put the single bracket, can you see here 2? And lot of inbuilt functionality also you will see like this 2, 10, 5, 3. This tells how many overloads are there. In the first option, what is showing the right hand side, see? Int array, right? As a parameter. And second one? Understood? So this is how you can differentiate how many overloads a particular function is or method is having. Clear? Okay. Now method overloading is done. Now you have small thing here, parameters you guys have already covered. Method overloading is done. Now one more topic is left out, wait. Optional and named parameters. Now what happens sometimes, you want a parameter, okay, which sometimes you may need, sometimes you may not need. Okay. So for example, you see here we have integer id, and then we have boolean type use short form and equal to false. See, when you assign a default value to a parameter, usually till now what we were seeing is we were only declaring the parameter, we were not giving any value. But you can do that also, and when the moment you do give the value, that parameter becomes optional parameters. Why? Because there is a default value given. If you don't pass the value, by default it will take as false. So when you are calling this method get user name, okay, then you have given the user ID here and then true. It means it will it will process it some way, in one way. But if you only give the user ID, in the second example you can see in the below, right, then it will by default take the value as false. Understood?
Given true, right?
In the first one, below that you see, we have not given at all.
Yeah.
But in that case, if you want to access that parameter, it will show you false, right? Now, in the second scenario you have seen, you have not at all passed the second parameter. But assume if you have more than one optional parameter, then how you will get to know, right, which parameter you have passed and which parameter you have not passed. Okay. So when you have more than one optional parameters, there is a certain way of passing it. For example, now you can see in this example, you have ID, like ID is there, then you have minimum sale, you have max sale, and you have include text. Apart from ID, rest all is a optional parameter. How many optional parameter? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3 or 4? 3. 3 optional parameters, right? Now, if you are not passing one of them, how you will get to know which one is, right, optional parameter? In that case, you have to pass it like this, right? First one you will pass it by default, you don't have to write the parameter name, because now you have more than one optional parameters. So you will put the parameter name. Like for example, now we want to only pass max sale, that is 5,000, right? Because now you are writing the parameter name, and then you are passing with the colon, you are passing the value. This is called named parameters. So you have to name the optional parameter for which you are passing the value. Here you are passing the constant, you can also pass the variable. Like instead of passing 5,000, you can put the variable which has the value for max sale. Okay, but you have to put a name if in the case when you have more than one optional parameter. Hope everybody understood. Any questions on this? These things will not come in practical use. Okay, overloading will definitely come too much. Optional parameters, sometimes named parameters I have never used in my career. So it can be avoided because usually you achieve all those things with overloading only. If you have multiple variables with the same function, basically you segregate the function rather than adding optional parameters. But sometimes in filters and all it is used. It's again up to developer. Understand it. If your coding requires optional parameters, use it. Otherwise, no problem. Okay. But do you have any doubt or any confusion on optional parameter, named parameter, or method overloading? Read method overloading properly. In optional parameter, named parameters, you can also understand there is a concept like this. But whenever use comes, you can refer the syntax. There is no need to remember the syntax because it is used very less, but you should be remembering the syntax for method overloading. There is nothing to remember. Basically, you have to pass, you have to understand what to pass. If you know the syntax for method, it will be the same syntax, only the variable type will vary. Sometimes number of variables might vary. Data type might be same, but previously first method used to take only one parameter, second one is taking two parameters. That is also possible. So just understand how it works, remember few basic syntax, and that should do. Start working on your examples, whatever you have read, brush it up. Monday onwards we will start some practicals. Like I don't know how much time will permit, but in 1 hour or 45 minutes, whatever is possible, we'll try to do for 1 or 2 days. Okay, thank you everyone.